Good morning. It's Monday morning. I am doing my little check-in here in the morning, seeing what meat I have thought out and ready to go, what I need to add to it for the week. This is the No Gluten Zone. Welcome or welcome back if you've been here before. I create content for people with food issues, and this is a highly requested video that people have asked for many times. And it took me a while to wrap my head around how to film this. This is a week in my kitchen. And after it was filmed, I had 12 hours of footage that I had to edit down. So this has been quite a beast. This was filmed the week before Thanksgiving. It was the last normal week in my kitchen before all the holiday stuff started. And it's taken me a while to get this edited down and posted. So I am steaming some eggs here. I like to keep deviled eggs on hand. It's a fantastic snack, high protein, and just my family really likes it. And then I refilled the eggs from a little chest refrigerator we have out in the garage because we buy 15 dozen eggs at a time from a local egg farm. And I also filled that little bowl and put it in the pantry. Those are room temperature eggs. I keep a small amount of for baking purposes because with gluten-free baking, it's really important that you add your eggs at room temperature. And now I'm making Mexican rice in my rice cooker. I did a video on this recipe in the past. It's really easy and it's so yummy. I keep forgetting that I want to add in like chopped up carrots or something the next time I do it. And then every time I just forget. But I still really want to try that. Maybe frozen corn too would be really good. But yeah, you just fry up the rice while you're getting everything ready. There's tomato sauce and seasonings and chicken broth. And I add the better than bouillon chicken flavor to the broth. And then I like to add a half a jalapeno in there. I take out the seeds and pith, so it's not super spicy at all. It's just really nice savory flavor. So if you're enjoying this video or if you've enjoyed this channel at all in the past, I encourage you to subscribe. I am setting a goal for this year, trying to get more subscribers and more activity on my account. I really do put a lot of thought and effort into what I share, and it's all just to try to help people. But I really do love cooking and baking and being in the kitchen. There are also days where I like to take a break, but yeah, it is my happy place for sure. So frying the rice is probably the most work of this whole making the Mexican rice. So then you fry it well, you add the tomato sauce, and you mix it in. Then I'm going to add the seasonings and mix it in. And then you want to heat that broth so it comes in hot, not cold. You don't want to add cold broth to the hot rice. So it's heated and I stir in the better than bouillon and then I add that. And then I stir this all up. You don't want any clumps in there. But basically, how I run my kitchen, people always ask, how do I cook from scratch most of our foods? And how do I manage it? How do I run it? And so a lot of people just wanted to see like a week in my kitchen. What am I doing? And a lot of what I'm doing is making things ahead of time and having them ready to go. That's how you make quick and easy meals. It also helps out my son and my husband. They both make their own breakfast in the morning. But again, I have turkey bacon cooked and ready to go for them. I have the pancake batter ready to go, made ahead of time. Those things help them out. And then the deviled egg snacks for them. I keep the rice there. And so then I make dinner for myself and my son, and there's always extra. And then my husband and son build their lunches off of those leftovers usually. I love these big rectangle containers for the rice. They just keep so nice in the fridge in those. And I usually just make one container at a time, but we were like really low. So I thought, well, I'm just going to make 2 and be totally stocked up here. And then I'm going to make these deviled eggs. I really love the Dash egg cooker. It steams them rather than boils them, but they have the same texture as a boiled egg, and they're just so much easier to peel. But I do let them cool down in their shell before I peel them. That really does help. And then I cut them in half, take out the yolks. There's so many different ways to make deviled eggs. Mine has always just been really simple. What I love is just some dill relish, or I'm sorry, yeah, sweet dill relish, and some mayonnaise. I probably do double the relish than I do mayonnaise. Otherwise it gets too liquidy and runny. And I just mix that up. And I like to put it in a little Ziploc bag and cut the corner off and sort of pipe it out into the eggs. It's just the easiest way, and then they look really nice. You could probably put like a nice tip on it to give it a fancier look. I don't do all that, but yeah, this is really the easiest way to do this for me. And then you see my dog show up. She loves the filling. So a lot of times we work off of these, you see the paper bowls and paper plates. And sometimes it's just for convenience to not have to wash them. But a lot of times it's because I want to let her lick it. Because we don't let her lick our actual dishes that we're going to wash and reuse. But on disposable dishes, yes, we will let her lick it and then we throw it away. So she is waiting to lick the bowl for the filling. And off camera here, I wish I could have gotten it. My son came and actually ate one of these before they even made it into the refrigerator. That's how loved they are. And then there she goes. She gets to lick this bowl. She's very happy about that. It's always a matter of guarding my thumbs as I hold it, because she sometimes sneaks in there and licks my thumb, and then I have to go wash my hands more thoroughly. But yeah, she loves it. So now I'm feeding my sourdough starter. I always give it a sniff to see where it's at. You know, there's a difference in the smell with the stage of it. I don't like the smell or the taste of it when it's too hungry. But it's also not good when it's not hungry enough, like it's not developed enough. So there's that middle stage where I like to feed it. And then I mark where it's at with the rubber band, and I put the top back on and put it away. So I brought in some salmon. We have a freezer out in our garage. I brought in some salmon to thaw out. I like to cook fish once a week, cook some sort of beef once a week, and then the rest of the week is, chicken, maybe a meatless main entree, and then leftovers. I work off of that too. And then I'm going to make my protein shakes. For quite a few years now, I have struggled, I think since like 2018, 2019, I've struggled in the morning. I'm hungry, but it's like my stomach can't handle food yet. And so I ended up turning to protein shakes, and it was the perfect answer. I used to have to drink them really, really slow. And I still don't rush them, but I'm not as slow as I used to be. So there has been some improvement there. But I have found with protein shakes and protein bars, if I eat them or drink them quickly, I don't feel as satiated or satisfied with it. So I always try to go slow with those. And that's kind of true with any meal that I eat. If I eat it really, really fast, I don't feel as satisfied with it. So I like to slow down, really enjoy my food, and really let it fill me, and feel satisfied with my meal. So I do this where I make 5 shakes at a time in my blender, and I put them in the refrigerator. And then every morning I come and grab my shake, and sometimes I'll have it for lunch too. Occasionally I'll have one for dinner, usually if I'm like on the go and I don't have anything to pack up, or I don't feel like packing up like a whole dinner, I'll just grab a shake. It's really nice and filling and easy to transport. So I do make these quite often. And this night I'm going to make a flank steak. And so I am putting together a marinade here so I can marinate it ahead of time. And I did look for a recipe online, and I kind of just roughly went off of that. I didn't really measure. It's hard to say. People ask me like, are you a measurer? Are you not? And it's like some things I measure and some things I don't. And it's hard for me to explain. Definitely with baking, where it's more of a science, and if it's off, it's not going to turn out right. I will measure those things. But like pancake mix, it's kind of like baking, but I measure some of it. I do measure like the flour and the baking powder and that kind of stuff, but like I don't really measure the water or the oil. So I don't know, even within one recipe, some stuff I measure and some stuff I don't. But this, I totally just looked at what was in it and just eyeballed it, and it turned out really good, actually. I always rinse my meat and dry it. I know that's like such a controversial thing, but I do sometimes struggle with histamine issues, and rinsing your meat will rinse off histamine for sure. So definitely I like to do that. I got my camera panned out on accident for a lot of these videos, and I apologize because it feels like I'm so far away you can't even see what I'm doing. My apologies on that. Like I said, this was my first time filming this kind of content, and depending how this video goes, I might do it again at some point. I would love to do one on just my sourdough starter. Like, I'm thinking like the life of my sourdough starter in a week or in 2 weeks or maybe in a month, just depending. I've really been challenging myself to not actually discard any of my sourdough, to actually use it all up and not waste. So that's something I'm trying to do, and I've been doing pretty good. So I've got veggies here. There's spaghetti squash, there's just mixed oven roasted veggies, and then there's the Mexican rice, and that's going to go alongside the steak. And most of the time I reheat these leftovers in the microwave, and then any portion that I actually cooked here on the spot will already be hot and get added on to the reheated stuff. And of course my dog is here because she smells beef, which she loves. She's praying. She's praying that I drop something or spill something, or am kind enough to share with her. I usually do save her something at the end of my meal, but yeah, she's pretty excited. Here, you can see. She's got her ball. She likes to roll her ball into the kitchen when our backs are turned, and then she panics because she's not allowed in the kitchen, and she knows that. So then she panics, like her ball is out of her reach, and she needs us to kick it out back to her. Sometimes we're like running late or we're in a hurry or something, and she's like rolling her ball in ready to play, and it's like, no, not right now. It's always the most inopportune time, of course, but she has no conception of any of that. So this steak said to take it out and tent it with aluminum foil for, I think it was 10 minutes. I did write down this recipe because I did really like it, so, and I will definitely make it again. So as it was tenting there near the end of that time, I went ahead and reheated my stuff. And I sort of have a formula down. If I use like a frozen veggie sometimes, that I cook for 3 minutes in the microwave. Most of my cold leftovers go for 2 minutes. And then if there's a meat that I'm reheating in the microwave, I only do a minute because I don't want it to get like rubbery, which it sometimes can. So sometimes I'll put like frozen veggie on the plate and put it in for a minute. Then I'll add the rest of the cold stuff and put it back for another minute, and then I'll add the meat and put it back for that third minute, and it works out really, really well. It's kind of a little bit of effort and timing it all, but it does really work out nicely, and the meat keeps a nice texture. But here I had meat freshly cooked and ready to go, so I wasn't microwaving any meat. And we are going to eat our dinner, and that's the end of Monday. It's now Tuesday morning. So I spent this morning in the sauna, and then I washed my hair, and then I came to make, well, and then I dried my hair mostly. And I came to make my morning coffee. If you are enjoying this video at all, I would ask you to consider hitting the like button. I would really appreciate that very, very much. So this morning I'm using my Aeropress. I did a video on that in the past. And I still love my French press, and I'm hoping to get a mocha pot. And so I will probably do a video on French press at some point, and then the mocha pot, if I do get it and like it, I will do a video on that too. I had to go 21 years with no coffee. And just in 2024, I was started being able to drink coffee again. And it's just so exciting for me. Every single morning, I'm so happy to have my coffee. And I do decaf, so it's not like an addiction. It's just something I really, really enjoy. And I'm going to feed my sourdough starter here while I enjoy my coffee. But yeah, some people think it's a little silly and I get carried away about my coffee. I really don't, but I really do enjoy being able to have it again because it's something I really, really like. And I always say the people who drink decaf are the true coffee lovers. They're not drinking it for the caffeine, they're drinking it because they really love coffee. So I fed my sourdough starter. So I was really stocked well on this day. And I could have taken a break. I considered taking a break, but then I chose to try a new recipe because sometimes new recipes can be very involved. And I'm like, I don't know if I have time for that on a day where I have other stuff going on. And so this was a good day where I just had plenty of time to sort of experiment with this recipe. And I am making a gluten-free pan dulce here. It's, Mexican sweetbread recipe. And I just was converting it from a regular wheat flour recipe. Overall, it turned out pretty decent. So I will probably make it again. My son really liked it a lot. My husband did like it too. Um, so it was requested, and I will get to it. I just have a list of stuff I want to make it before I get back to it. But yes, I will get back to it. So this was yeasted. I'm doing the proofing the yeast there and then working on the rest of the batter. I will always say the kitchen is my happy place. Cooking and baking just really, really make me happy. I wish I could have like my own little, kind of like a corner bakery or a Panera, but totally gluten free. Like something like that, where you have like soup, salad, sandwiches, and then like little sweet treats too. Like that would just be so, so cool. There's actually a place in Santa Barbara, California, like that, Lilac Patisserie, one of my favorite gluten-free places to go. Really nice. If you're ever in that area, definitely check it out. I'm restocking my room temperature baking eggs there. They live in the pantry in that bowl because when you bake gluten-free, it's really important to add your eggs at room temperature and not when they're cold. Still enjoying that coffee. And if you see these containers here where I have my flour and I think that's cacao powder. I have one with brown sugar and one with cacao powder. The rest are all flours and starches. I got them at Smart and Final and they're just fantastic. They seal so airtight and they've just been perfect. I have 4 quarts and mostly 2 quarts, like the one on top there. And then I have a couple of 4 quarts for things that I use a lot of. And they've been wonderful. So this recipe, because I'm converting from a regular wheat recipe, I am using my like 1-to-1 flour blend, which I've done a video on in the past. So then I have the dough here, and I'm going to take it out and start shaping into the little pan dulces. I was also wearing a castor oil pack for my liver on this day. That's why I'm wearing that shirt. It's one of my husband's shirts. That's why it says dad. And I had asked him because I'm always worried about getting the oil on my clothes and staining my clothes and ruining them. So I wanted to just wear something that I didn't care about on those days. And so I asked my husband, do you have any old shirts to get rid of that I could just have for when I do my castor oil pack? And he gave me that one. But he has since given me a different one because I was complaining that I can't like go out in public wearing a shirt that says dad. So he gave me a different one now that works better. So these little mats that you see me putting under the baking sheets are actually for seed sprouting. You put them under your planters, for sprouting your seeds indoors, and it keeps them warm. And so it's a really nice, gentle warmth. And I like to use them for rising doughs. It's not extreme heat, but it does help encourage it to rise really nicely. So I usually put that on the bottom and then I cover them with a towel. So they're going to sit there and rise while I make the topping that goes on top. This is the one part that didn't go quite as planned. You're supposed to make this topping, then you're supposed to split it in half, make half of it into vanilla and half of it into chocolate. And then you're supposed to press it out with a tortilla press, which I pulled mine out. If you see it there, it's black cast iron, but it was too like soft to be rolled out like that. And I even added some stuff to it to firm it somewhat. And it was still just not a consistency to be rolled out or cut out. So I ended up sort of spreading it onto the top of the pan dulces instead of just laying a sheet of it like it was supposed to be. But it still tasted really good. I thought it was still very, very decent, even though it wasn't perfect. So there, that one going back on the mixer, I'm going to mix into the chocolate and make it the chocolate version. And then this other half that I took off, I'm going to mix by hand and turn it into the vanilla version. So there, I'm mixing up the vanilla one while the stand mixer mixes in. I thought it would be easier to mix in vanilla extract by hand versus mixing in cacao powder by hand. So that's how I made that decision. And I think I made a good decision. It worked very well. But you can see sort of the texture right there. It's just it's too soft and kind of liquidy to be rolled out or pressed out like a sheet of dough, which sort of the way it's supposed to be. So yeah, I ended up just spreading it on top, and it worked. I thought it worked really, really well, even though it wasn't the way it was supposed to be. Sometimes you can't make things right, especially when you're converting recipes and that sort of thing. And sometimes it's just what's the next best thing you can accomplish with it, right? Just finding a way to not just give up and throw it all away, but to find a way to push through and make it work in some capacity. And I was actually very pleased with the results, even though that was the case here. So then I'm baking them. And I'm going to let them cool. And then I'm going to make chicken for dinner. This is like my favorite. Here's my dog again because she smells the chicken. This is like my favorite. That's her dinner right there. I leave it there, and then my son comes and gets it and feeds her. But yes, this is like my favorite way to make chicken thighs. I just rinse them, dry them, put them in a bowl with some oil, avocado oil, and whatever seasoning. You can vary the seasoning to whatever you want, and then you just bake them at, I believe it's 425 degrees Fahrenheit for like 40 to 45 minutes, and they're so good. That's my favorite way to do chicken thighs. And then I added on here some, get spaghetti squash, I think. I love spaghetti squash, and those are just oven roasted mixed veggies that I just chop up a whole bunch of different stuff and roast it in the oven. And then um, spaghetti squash, people always say like, oh, put marinara sauce or Alfredo sauce on it, and I just put butter and salt because I want to taste the squash. You put other stuff, and like you're covering up the flavor of the squash, which I love. So I don't know. My son and I like to eat spaghetti squash with just butter and salt. And we have an abundance of lettuce in our garden right now. It's that, and we have some kale. Those are like the two things that are doing really, really well right now. But you know, it's the winter garden. There's not a lot to be expected, but the lettuce is fantastic. So I was making a salad here. Just a very simple, nothing fancy, just some lettuce with some salad dressing. Um, it's always good to get your greens in. And it's Wednesday morning. Here I am doing an assessment on what I have and what I need. And we're running low on turkey bacon. I always have turkey bacon cooked and ready to go in the fridge. My husband and son use it in breakfast a lot of times, just a piece of it, or they'll like cut it up and put it in their omelet. Sometimes I will cut it up and put it on top of a salad, or I'll put the slices onto a sandwich or something. We use it in a lot of ways, but it does mostly get used at breakfast time. And so I cook it and have it in there ready to go. I always sniff that, and most meats and most foods actually, but I have gotten bad batches of turkey bacon before. Not this brand, I have to say, but I have had some that were spoiled, and so I always check. I always go by feel. If it's sticky or slimy, that's not a good sign, and then of course the smell can also indicate it too. So I always check those things. And I just put it out on a baking sheet. I spritz it with a little bit of avocado oil so it doesn't get super dry. And I bake it on one side for 14 minutes, and then I flip them and bake them for 15 more minutes. And we're also running low on pancake batter. My son always eats pancakes with his breakfast, and my husband likes to make waffles. They use the same batter for both of those, so I always have it ready to go in the refrigerator for them. So I'm restocking that. I've started adding a little bit of sourdough discard to the pancake batter, and it just makes it so much puffier and nicer. It's really, really nice. And then I just store it in these jars. When they get down to one jar, I make two more jars. And each time they're down to one jar, I make two more jars. And that's just how I keep it going so that they never run out. And working on that turkey bacon. And I'm going to pull out my recipe cards. I am going to make some sourdough buttermilk biscuits. I really, really like biscuits. When I was a teenager learning to cook, the very first thing I ever baked was biscuits, buttermilk. Or actually, I don't think they were buttermilk, the first ones. And then later on, I usually used yogurt instead of buttermilk, which is also really, really good. Um, Now I always have buttermilk powder in the kitchen. So if I don't have buttermilk or yogurt, I could do that if I want. And sometimes I just make them without any of the soured product in them. Just depends on what I have and what I'm desiring. But I really do like biscuits. They're so quick and easy and just so comforting and satisfying. And it's not something I really grew up eating like as a child, but I started making them as a teenager and fell in love with them and just have been making them like my whole life. And now I make them gluten free. This is sort of a newish recipe. It's taken me a while to find a recipe that I actually liked. And I converted this recipe actually over from a regular wheat sourdough biscuit recipe. And it worked out really well. So I will probably do a video on that recipe at some point. There's my dog wanting food. Always, always hungry. And the turkey bacon is done. It's going to cool. That's why my dog is there. She smells the turkey bacon. And then I'm going to feed my sourdough starter. We named our sourdough starter, well, I had a sourdough starter before earlier this year. His name was Charles because he, puffs up and sort of creeps. And I have a plant called a creeping Charlie. So we named him Charlie. And then he went bad. I wasn't using him much, so I had him in the fridge and he went kind of moldy. So I threw it out, and we were in the middle of our kitchen remodel at the time. So I waited until we got settled back into our kitchen to start a new sourdough starter. And I asked my son, what do we name him? And so we decided he was Charles the Second. So instead of Charlie, it's a little more formal now. But I usually just call him Charles. So I was feeding Charles. And now I'm making more of my 1-to-1 flour blend. I have two flour blends that I pretty much just work off of, just those two. One is a 1-to-1 if it's a recipe I'm converting, or a recipe calling for a like 1-to-1 measure for measure, cup for cup type flour. And if it's not, if it's just asking for just like your typical all-purpose gluten-free flour, I have a different one that I use. I need to see if I think I did do a video on it in the past. If I didn't, I will do one, but I'm pretty sure I did. That one is from Annalise G. Roberts. I started with her cookbooks early on as a new gluten-free celiac, and I just love her recipes and love her flour blend. So I pretty much just work off of those two blends. Because I mean, you look at recipes and it's always like, make this blend and make that blend or buy that blend. And I mean, how many are you going to have in your house? So I've really tried to simplify and just have the two. There's a 1-to-1 and then a non 1-to-1. And so for dinner here, I am making this no boil pasta bake. You don't boil the pasta ahead of time, it cooks while it's baking in the oven. It's so good, and my son loves it. My son is not a big pasta eater, and my husband's not either. But my son does like pasta sometimes with Alfredo sauce. He really doesn't like tomato much, so he doesn't like marinara. But I make the Alfredo from scratch. I've never found one in a jar where I really like the ingredients. And it's so easy to make. So I just make 2 batches of my Alfredo sauce for this particular recipe. And you put chicken broth in there to help cook the pasta and some seasonings. And I cut up chicken. So a lot of times I will, if I know I want to make this, like I'll have extra chicken made ahead of time so that I can do this. And it's just so, I need to do a video on this particular recipe because it's so easy and it's so good. So yeah, you just set it all up and then I chop up the chicken, put it on top, and you put foil over top, seal it up, and then bake it. So easy. And there's my dough for the biscuits that's been rising. And now I add on, I forget, I think there's a couple little things like baking powder and salt or something that you add on after it rises. And then you shape it into the biscuits and bake it. So I like to put them into this cast iron skillet, and I like to scoop them out with ice cream scooper rather than rolling out and trying to cut out and all that. It's just so much easier to do like a drop biscuit. And I'm going to bake those, and there's the pasta coming out. And because we have that abundance of lettuce in our winter garden, we're having another little salad with our pasta and biscuits. So I'm just putting some salad dressing on mine. That's my homemade Italian vinaigrette. And then I had pulled out 3 bottles of dressing out of the fridge to let my son choose whichever he wants. So we've got the little salad, we've got our pasta. I like the Italian vinaigrette alongside the pasta, just very Italian and yummy. And then I put the biscuit too. This was a really, really nice dinner. And if you're still here with me, it's Thursday morning. This morning, I am baking a sourdough coffee cake. It's really good. It's a converted recipe that I converted from a regular wheat recipe, and it turned out so great. And on this day, I am making it, I'm splitting it into 2 pans, and I'm going to keep half for us at our house, and then the other half I'm taking to a potluck tomorrow morning that I'm going to. So that's perfect because the whole thing is a little too much for us to finish before it goes bad. And it's just, we get a little tired of it before we finish it. So I was planning to half the recipe the next time I made it. And then I had this potluck that I needed to make something for. And I thought, that's perfect. That's the perfect thing to take. And then I could keep half of it for us and just take half to the potluck. So it worked out really, really well. I will have to do a video on this recipe at some point because it's just so good. Even just the cake alone, if you leave out the whole cinnamon filling thing, it's just such a yummy vanilla cake, and it's got sourdough discard. It's just wonderful. So there, I'm mixing up the topping. And in the stand mixer, we have the actual cake portion going. I believe you can let it sit and sort of ferment. I don't normally. I just mix it up and bake it without giving it time to ferment. But you could because it has the sourdough discard in it. I like to line the pan with parchment so it's easier to get it out. It doesn't stick in there. And when you put parchment into a pan, I like to crumple it all up first, and then it will conform to the shape of the pan because it's just so hard. Some people cut it all perfect and fold it in there. I just don't have time for that. So I just crumple it up and then I put it in there and shape it to the pan. And it's just perfect. So there, I'm still working on the filling there, finishing that up while the cake portion bakes. It bakes partially before I add that filling part. The first time I made it, it said to put the filling in the middle. So you put some cake batter, then the filling, and then more cake batter. And the filling just sunk to the bottom, which wasn't horrible, but it wasn't the way it was supposed to be. So this time around, I baked the cake part way and then put that filling as a topping. And it was good. I think I still prefer it on the bottom though. So I think I might go back to making it that way because it kind of affected like the cake texture when it was sitting on top like that. But it's always fun to work on recipes and make little changes and adaptations to what you want it to be. So here I'm adding that filling on top, and then I'll put it back in the oven with that topping and finish it up. I do this same technique when I make my blueberry buckle, which I should probably do a video on that too. So lots of great recipe videos will be coming in the future for sure. I'm going to feed my sourdough starter here. I always put my discard into a jar and keep it in the refrigerator. And I've been really challenging myself to use all of it and not waste any. And I've been doing a really good job. Sometimes I put it in the microwave if it's a little chilly in the house. It just depends. It's kind of nice in there. But if I have the oven going for a long time, the microwave tends to get really warm, sometimes a little too warm. So it just depends what's going on. So I'm going to put these on the cooling rack there. Let them cool down. And then I'm going to make a marinade. I'm going to make salmon this night. And I've been doing, a lot of times I just do a plain baked salmon, but I've been doing this maple glazed salmon recently, and I really, really like it. So I like to marinate it a little bit ahead of time. So that's what I'm doing here. Just put the marinade in the bag, and then I rinse and dry my salmon. And then I put them in there and let them sit for a little while in the refrigerator in the marinade. And it's a very subtle flavor. Like you don't really notice. It's not like an overly sweet taste when you eat it, but it's really, really nice. So they're going to sit in the fridge and marinate. And then I'm going to finish off these deviled eggs. They've cooled down. When I do them in that rapid dash egg cooker and I let them cool down, they're just so easy to peel. And then I did this earlier in this video where I take all the yolks out. You know, you mash them. I just mash them with a fork. I add relish, usually like 2 scoops of relish, and then 1 scoop of mayo. It's typically how I like it. Just mix it all together. Then I put it in a little zipper baggie and I cut the corner off and I sort of pipe it into the eggs. And there's my dog again. If you remember earlier this week, it's always like this when I do the deviled eggs. She comes and waits to lick that bowl, and that's why I use a paper bowl so she can lick it and I can just throw it in the trash. So I'm going to put those eggs in the refrigerator. And she gets to lick her bowl. So moving on. I love that recipe box. I'm going to make spaghetti squash. My son and I love spaghetti squash. I love that Costco always has organic spaghetti squash this time of year. So you just cut it in half. If they're big, this is kind of a big squash. They're a little bit harder to cut in half, but you cut it in half and you scoop out the seeds. Then I put it on a baking sheet, and I got interrupted here. I'm going to cut this coffee cake. Sometimes I split each side in thirds and have 9 pieces, and sometimes I'll cut it each side into fourths and end up with 16 pieces. So the spaghetti squash is all done, and now I just scrape it out with a fork. And, it's not really pasta-like to me, but it is like little threads and strings. And I do really like it, but I don't really like it with like pasta sauce. I like it with just butter and salt where you can really taste the flavor of the squash. It's really good. So I'm going to heat up some rice. And I brought in more meat to thaw out. We have a freezer in our garage where we keep the bulk of it. And we're going to have rice and then the spaghetti squash. There's the butter. Put some butter and salt on that spaghetti squash. And then I'm refilling the lettuce. Like I've said, there's an abundance of lettuce in our garden right now. And then the salmon is done. So the salmon and the spaghetti squash and the rice makes for a very nice dinner. Bon appetit. And if you've made it this far, it's Friday morning. Taking stock of what I have, what I need. Just a little run through of the refrigerator. And today I'm going to make chicken and dumplings. This is a little more involved of a meal. It's not a quick and easy meal. My dog was there begging, and I gave her a piece of celery, which she does not like, so she promptly left. So I'm just chopping up some celery and onions. This recipe called for carrots, and I didn't have any at this time because there was a carrot recall happening. There were carrots in the store, but I didn't want to take the chance to buy them for a little while. I waited. I got the onion going. My dog just smells all the smells and is really excited. And I got some garlic here. I'm going to throw it in there with the onion. And I have this chopper where you pull the cord and it chops because I don't know, I just really dislike chopping onion. I like my onion chopped small and it's just so much work. So I really love doing it in there. And now I'm getting started on the dumpling ingredients. And I'm going to feed my sourdough starter. Would be really cool to get a recipe for sourdough dumplings. That's something I might need to work on. I mark where the sourdough starter's at. I put the top back on and it's just going to go in the corner today. So here I am setting up the chicken. For this recipe, I use bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs. Most of the time I cook with boneless, skinless chicken thighs. So this is a little bit different, and I'm just going to brown them up. And I'm still working there little by little on those dumplings. So this is sort of a, I never know if this is considered a soup or a stew. It's kind of, could be either one, but it's so flavorful and the dumplings just are so, so good. So the dumpling recipe I use is actually by Annalise G. Roberts. And then I just went online and found a recipe for chicken and dumplings. So I follow all of that, and except for the dumpling part at the end, I just swap in my gluten-free dumplings in place of the one in the recipe. And I'm sure there's other recipes out there for chicken and dumplings. Maybe some are simpler. This one's kind of a lengthy and more involved recipe, but it's just so good that I never looked for. It was the first one I chose to try, and it was so good that I just stuck with it and haven't looked for anything else. And my dog is just loving all the smells here with the chicken. And she wants her dinner. She keeps bringing her ball, wanting to play. Can see her tail just going. On this day, my back was hurting quite a bit. I do remember that. Some days, by the end of the day, it's usually always hurting, but some days are a lot worse than others. And I hadn't made it in quite a while, so I had to keep looking at the recipe, making sure I was on track and not messing up. And there's a lot of waiting where it's just simmering. And then I pull the chicken out. So here I took some of the chicken and dumpling stock out, and I'm seasoning it and thickening it up and putting it back in. And here I am just shredding the chicken off of the bone. Because once it cooks really nicely, it comes off really, really easily. I just use 2 forks to kind of pull it apart and pull it off. And then you put it back into the pot. And then I'm going to start mixing up the dumplings. You know, it's a mix your flour with your butter and then add your liquid kind of recipe. And then you just form them into balls and drop them in there. And it says, you know, to not pack them super tight. You want them to kind of to put it into a ball so it holds together, but not super, super tight, so it has a nice texture. And then I put those bones into the freezer. I will use them to make broth later on. And there we go. I boiled the dumplings in there, and it is ready to go. So I just spoon it up into these soup bowls for myself and my son, and my dog is hoping. She's hoping, but these are not disposable bowls, so she will not be licking these. And I hope you enjoyed this video. God bless you.